All right, welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, sometimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that we are all living in a modern day spiritual paradise, courtesy of the 10 guys in upstate New York. I am your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and most importantly, a kid raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses throughout the 70s and 80s. Warning, as I often like to do here, we like to have some fun here. There's some sarcasm, humor, my own off-brand of observation in personal experiences. Know that that is never meant to offend. It's just injecting and sharing my own personality and strange thought patterns in my time as one of Jehovah's Witnesses through several generations. I want to give an additional warning this week because I feel as though this particular topic is incredibly important. And it's one that probably will have to be covered multiple times from multiple different angles. But this particular episode may be longer than usual, so you have been forewarned. I just feel like this is particularly a big deal. Hopefully you're in a relaxed state or on a long drive, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening, and please stay. I want to ask you, what did you fear, or do you fear most as one of Jehovah's Witnesses? Was it Armageddon and getting hit in the face with a fireball? Was it being swallowed by the earth as depicted in so many heartwarming illustrations in the literature? Was it being labeled a bad association or being marked by others in the congregation, courtesy of your very own local needs talk that everyone knew was about you and your sin? Was it a shepherding call you didn't know what was about? How about a judicial meeting? Always struck fear. Getting privately reproved, publicly reproved. Or maybe it was just feeling like an outcast when you entered the real world and had to face life outside of Kingdom Hall, or being made fun of at school. For me, it was running into someone from school in field service at the door. That sent tremors throughout. Might it have been the demons, or the idea that Jehovah and Jesus are watching every move you make from their sky seats as gigantic voyeurs? Maybe it was someone asking you an actual Bible question while at the door in field service. It could be one of a million things because we're all so different. But I think that most anyone that stumbled into this show would agree that fear is a very real part of the daily life of one of Jehovah's Witnesses. There are many, many things a Jehovah's Witness fears. It's a culture of fear. Some, this guy included, just fear letting Jehovah down by being an actual imperfect human. There are so many things. But to me, particularly in 2023, there is one thing, one label that by the governing body's definition trumps every other fearful outcome or label among Jehovah's Witnesses. It starts with an A. It's the big A. And I'm not referring to the scarlet letter of adultery. That's small potatoes in Jehovah's Witnesses' future show. That's nothing. It's worse. It's not even Armageddon. Not for most people. No, the big A, say it with me. If you're here, you know what I'm talking about. It is apostasy. There is nothing worse, I should say, to a Jehovah's Witness than apostasy, or being labeled an apostate, or having apostate thinking, even if it's just doubts. Never mind that the Bible comments on those too. Apostasy and the word, or the insinuation of it, strikes fear in a Jehovah's Witness because they know what it means. And I want to start by saying that apostasy and apostates intrigued me from a very young age. As a kid in the 70s and 80s, apostates would picket our stadium. There'd be 5, 7, 10 of them out front of the summer district convention, wherever stadium you attended, and they'd have pickets with scriptures and you're being lied to. And I would sneak peeks at their signs, and then I would bury my head as a kid. I was fearful that Jehovah saw me look at them. But then as an adult and elder, I would see them and consistently ponder one thought. Why? Why are these people here? Why do these apostates do this? Don't they have anything better to do now that they're out? Why are they wasting their Saturday morning or afternoon marching around us in front of the district convention? If it were me and I was an apostate, I'd be out partying. It's the true thoughts I had as an elder. I remember my last district convention, they were there. And I stood there and stared at them. And I wondered, what are you doing? It's sunny. Go take a hike, go to the beach. It would intrigue me as to why they wasted time doing it, if they hated Jehovah and Jehovah's Witnesses. So don't think that as we progress through this episode, the irony isn't lost on me that I now do this very same thing with this little podcast. But the difference is, personally, that I understand the why now. After 13 years out of Jehovah's Witnesses, I suddenly, through a series of events and other decisions I'll go into at some point, I simply found myself wanting to help one person. And for me, I have an affinity for children, the innocence, the very special time that is in your life, probably because I lost a lot of mine being raised a Jehovah's Witness. But I wanted to help one person not be consumed by this cult. And I always thought it was so weird for these apostates to waste time protesting versus just out having fun and enjoying life, finally. It really is one of the reasons that for 13 years, I didn't become an activist. I didn't want to talk about Jehovah's Witnesses. I didn't care. But that changed for me about a year ago. And for me, I wanted to decide that if I could help one person, even if it's with flipping this microphone on and just babbling, that I was going to do it. One person that would stop, sit, and think about what they're a part of. But getting back to apostasy, there truly isn't a word, an accusation, there isn't a fear that I think many would agree is greater among Jehovah's Witnesses than being labeled an apostate or being disciplined for apostasy. Nothing. Zero. It's a Jehovah's Witness death sentence while you're alive. It is the one thing there is no coming back from. It's the end for you. Getting anywhere near apostasy or the thought that you're thinking about it gets you labeled for life in a congregation. Among the people you love, your longest friends, your family. Apostasy is the one thing that most long-term Jehovah's Witnesses fear more than anything else. If you're a Jehovah's Witness and decide to just leave, you, ladies and gentlemen, are as bad as Satan himself, and you're doomed to a bloody death. According to the governing body, it is game over. You are bird food. Make no mistake. In the Watchtower of 2009, April 15th, pages 3 through 7, in the article, Job Held High the Name of Jehovah, we get this tidbit from the governing body, quote, Satan was the first creature to turn apostate. Modern-day apostates display characteristics similar to those of the devil. Their mind may be poisoned by a critical attitude toward individuals in the congregations, Christian elders, or the governing body. Some apostates oppose the use of the divine name Jehovah. They're not interested in learning about Jehovah or in serving him. Like their father, Satan, apostates target people of integrity. No wonder servants of Jehovah avoid all contact with them. End quote. Seems pretty straightforward. It's a death sentence for a Jehovah's Witness. And the governing body leans into the Bible to prove their point. Never mind that it doesn't apply. We'll get into that. But at Hebrews chapter 6, verses 4 through 6, something that is consistently rolled out by Jehovah's Witnesses whenever they are doubting the latest pile of shit from the governing body, they are hit with this. Hebrews 6, 4 through 6, quote, "It is impossible as regards those who have once for all been enlightened, and who have tasted the heavenly free gift, and who have become partakers of Holy Spirit, and who have tasted the fine word of God and the powers of the coming system of things, but who have fallen away." Brackets in this verse, if they then commit apostasy in the Revised Standard Version. It is impossible to revive them again to repentance, because they impale the Son of God afresh for themselves and expose him to public shame. End quote. If you're keeping track in just two references from the Watchtower and then the scripture they love to quote, this is a death sentence for a Jehovah's Witness. And that's why I label it the most fearful thing. It's important to note here, and while it makes my skin crawl and my blood pressure spike, you can literally be a child molester, an abuser of children, beat your wife, steal things, embezzle, lie, slander. You can do all of that. Sure, you'll be disciplined. Your name will be announced on the stage. But you'll get to sit in the back row of a kingdom hall for however amount of months or years the local body of elders discerns. You can sit there and you can show or demonstrate repentance for all of those disgusting crimes and still have a shot. If you disagree with the governing body on anything, you, my friend, are bird food. You are an apostate. You have given into apostasy. And as they note here in Hebrews 6, there's no coming back. It is truly game over for you as a Jehovah's Witness. In the Watchtower of April 1st, 1982, page 27, it says it all on what they view people who disagree with, quote, Jehovah's organization. Notice it's not mentioned in Hebrews. That doesn't matter to the governing body. Watchtower 4182, page 27, says this, quote, "Similarly," my least favorite word in the world and in every Watchtower study, side note, I hate that word. "Similarly, unrepentant apostates go at death not to Sheol or Hades, but to Gehenna." Side note, Gehenna for Jehovah's Witness is the second death. It is totality. It is game over. There's no coming back from Gehenna. That's where Satan goes. Back to the quote. "The same is true of dedicated Christians who persist in willful sin or those who shrink back. These are merely examples to show that some, even in this system of things, have committed the sin for which there is no forgiveness, not even in the system of things to come. They will, therefore, not be resurrected." End quote. The governing body teaches anyone who disagrees with them, on any level, that you have strayed or are straying into apostasy, the big A. And it is the scariest stuff a witness may face, often causing them to keep it private to themselves until they combust and share it with someone, and that could be the end of their life as a Jehovah's Witness. As you can see here, there's not even a way to repent. You could be a murderer, you can abuse and sexually assault children, and you can still repent and be a Jehovah's Witness. They're doing it today in kingdom halls. But if you disagree with the governing body, your life, your friends, your family are all now over. When I was a kid, to really knock this point home, the governing body leaned into a Bible story like they always do, right? And I know there's going to be lots of people that remember this too, because I know that this was an endless story kicked back and shot out to us at every opportunity when it comes to doubting anyone in authority at headquarters. The governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses have long used the story of Korah and his rebellion against Moses and Aaron's authority found in the Bible at Numbers chapter 16. And it's everything you might expect from the 10 guys in upstate New York. They, of course, in this Bible drama, represent Moses and Aaron. And all of us that don't agree with them are, of course, Korah and his sons. And I know this will shock you. It ends the way you might expect. Korah gets swallowed up by the earth, one of Jehovah's favorite natural weapons, soon to be deployed against the rest of us any day now. Oh, and in true fashion, the Bible goes on to tell us at number 16 that the Lord's anger burned and a plague struck, killing another 14,700 Israelites. If you're keeping track on the scoreboard, Korah, a few people around him, and almost 15,000 people had some questions regarding Moses and Aaron. Never mind that Aaron was worshiping golden calves. Moses was boasting and getting punished. They had some questions as to why they were in charge. Jehovah swallowed them in the earth, and then he struck the people looking on who might have had some doubts with disease. So if you disagree with the governing body, Moses, you either get a dirt nap or a disease. Just Jehovah doing Jehovah things, according to the governing body. But the governing body likens those that don't believe that they, on a random day in 1919, were spotted by Jesus, who looked at Joe Rutherford and said, "Wow, I like this guy. Look at this guy. He's a drunk. He's smuggling booze. He's having multiple affairs on record. He's spewing racism in print. And he's building mansions in San Diego for people who get resurrected, or maybe just for himself and the ladies. I'll make him my main guy." And I saw district convention dramas on this. And I'm sure some of you will remember the booming speakers of the earthquake sounds when Korah has pushed his luck and dudes being swallowed into the stage at the district convention. It really makes an impression on a young kid on this issue of apostasy and disagreement on anything that has to do with the governing body or the organization. If you're new to this whole concept among Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'd be surprised if there's many of you, would love that you might be here listening. Most of us are very familiar with this because, we count ourselves among the apostate crowd, the apostate army. But if you're familiar to this, you might be asking, what is an apostate according to Jehovah's Witnesses? Well, if you go to their little website, URL is simple, I just hate saying it, you will find the definition of apostasy quite easy by just popping it into the search bar. It comes with this definition, quote, "This term in Greek, that being apostasy, comes from a verb literally meaning to stand away from. The noun has the sense of desertion, abandonment, or rebellion. In the Christian Greek scriptures, apostasy is used primarily with regard to those who defect from true worship." End quote. Seems pretty straightforward in the Greek. Abandonment of true worship. It's a big bucket though, right? We'll leave it to the 10 guys in upstate New York to give us plenty of extra information on what the Greek word means, despite their lack of Greek scholarship or even speaking Greek. I turn you to the Reasoning from the Scriptures book, a absolute staple during my time as a witness, as a ministerial servant and an elder. We did service meeting parts out of the Reasoning from the Scriptures book. It was a small book, dark brown color. It was in every book bag, and it was designed to help Jehovah's Witnesses who rarely study or read the Bible be able to turn through its index and answer questions at the door. The Reasoning from the Scriptures book gave this definition for apostasy, and you can look it up. It says, apostasy, and notice the difference between this and the Greek word. Same word, different definition. Apostasy, quote, "Apostasy is abandoning or deserting the worship and service of God, actually a rebellion against Jehovah God. Some apostates profess to know and serve God, but reject teachings or requirements set out in His Word." Note this part, quote, "Others claim to believe the Bible, but reject Jehovah's organization," end quote. organization, not found in the Greek definition of apostasy, but found via the 10 guys in upstate New York. There couldn't possibly be a correlation, could there? Apostasy suddenly means rejecting Jehovah's organization, an organization not mentioned or taught anywhere in Jehovah's holy book known as the Bible. No governing body. Some of us as apostates are just smart enough to know generations don't overlap. We're smart enough to know you've been wrong on every single prediction in terms of dates that you have ever made. Some of us apostates know that tinfoil is not demonized. And some of us also know you don't have the cure for cancer. All things you have in print. In addition, us apostates are confused why Jesus cares about my facial hair, why a woman can't speak up, or why I can't go to college, but you have lawyers, doctors, dentists, civil engineers working for you for free in an upstate New York compound, also now in Australia building movie sets. All of these things are facts. They're not doubts or apostasy. They're facts. And when I read God's book, the Bible, it makes a very straightforward comment about anyone that does what the governing body and his organization do. And they do it regularly. Are you ready for this? Ready to hear what you, 10 guys in upstate New York, say is your book given to you by your God and what it blatantly says about you and what you have habitually done for over a century? Here it comes, an apostate's favorite scripture from God's holy word. At Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 20 through 22, it says very plainly, quote, "If any prophet presumptuously speaks a word in my name that I did not command him to speak, or speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet must die. However, you may say in your heart, how will we know that Jehovah has not spoken the word? When the prophet speaks in the name of Jehovah, and the word is not fulfilled, or does not come true, then Jehovah did not speak that word. The prophet spoke it presumptuously. You should not fear him." End quote. It's the apostate credo. The governing body, his organization, their definition of apostasy, and the fear they instill in Jehovah's Witnesses is completely BS. The Bible speaks to people like the governing body, and they've always been there throughout history. They've always been there. They say something that doesn't come true. Do you have any concept of the things the governing body has told millions of Jehovah's Witnesses that have never come true? It's easy. They're all still in print. You can find them on their website. You can find them in libraries. Unless it's Kingdom Halls, they've made a real concerted effort to get them out of Kingdom Halls so you can't look. They know that they preach laziness to Jehovah's Witnesses, and most of them won't study. They won't look at their own literature or their history. They count on this. Incidentally, wondering if you as a listener are as fascinated about this one fact as I am. If you go and drop Deuteronomy 18:20 through 22 into the search bar in the online Watchtower library on their website, I'd like you to take a guess at how many references come back in their publications for Deuteronomy 18:20 through 22. Do you want to venture a guess? I feel like I should play the Jeopardy music right here. Let me make this easy. 0. None. Zip. They comment on a single word in several verses more than they do Deuteronomy 18. I wonder why. It's at this time, if you're a witness or someone on the fence, please note, Jehovah's organization has in print predicted the end of the world or the establishment of God's kingdom multiple times. And folks, we're still waiting. I'm drinking an Ethiopian single origin coffee as I ramble. What are you doing? I hope it's fun and you're well. But if you're a witness or you're doubting that this is correct, Jehovah's Witnesses in print have predicted the end of the world in 1878, 1881, 1914, 1918, 1925, 1975. They went on to, in the May 1984 classic cover on the Watchtower, to say this generation will never die. Folks, they're all dead. They're all dead. It's not hard to prove. I simply just have to wonder why, excuse me, they stay away from Deuteronomy 18:20-22. Why could that be? But let's clear this up immediately. Immediately. Apostasy and being accused of being an apostate is by far and away the best example of the governing body twisting a word to their benefit. The Bible speaks openly of apostasy. I'm not ignorant. I'm not stupid. And the outcome of someone that rejects God and his Son. It speaks of apostasy plainly as abandoning God and rejecting his ways, most especially Jesus. At no point, anywhere, does the Bible refer to apostasy as disagreeing with 10 clowns in upstate New York. Ever. Nowhere. Zero. The biblical definition of apostasy is rejecting God, his teachings, and as I mentioned, especially his Son Jesus, who he sent to save us all. And I can say conclusively here, very few who leave Jehovah's Witnesses leave for the reasons I just rambled off on. Minutia. If you think crowds of Jehovah's Witnesses run to the door because they hate Jehovah, his message to mankind, or Jesus' kindness as found in the Gospels, you would be incorrect. Those things are the very things that attract a Jehovah's Witness. The message fabricated by the governing body that Jesus taught about a paradise earth, heartbreaking to tell you he did not, is an attractive message. Jesus' kindness to women, to prostitutes, to tax collectors, to Gentiles, to anybody is attractive. People leave for a completely different reason, folks. Some people who leave wonder why Jesus chose 10 imperfect guys, it was just 8 a few weeks ago, now it's up to 10, in New York to build a real estate empire, or to build movie sets in Australia to film videos when the world's about to be blown up. Other people leave for horrific, unspeakable, emotional issues such as child abuse, or a loved one or someone close to them choosing to die rather than take a blood transfusion, but they can take fractions. They can eat cheese, bread, lettuce, mayonnaise. They just can't eat a sandwich? What? But by far and away, most people leave or become apostate because they simply don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. They're tired of the lies, and they're still waiting for someone to explain what an overlapping generation is, or where to even find it in the Bible. It's interesting to note that when people leave and they're labeled apostates by Jehovah's Witness, many, and hopefully, and I think some who may listen to the show, I appreciate you because I am respectful, even if I do poke fun and have my own thoughts on things. I'm respectful of what people believe. Many who leave Jehovah's Witnesses actually remain Christians, pursue other religious beliefs under the umbrella of Christianity, or pursue just other spiritual beliefs altogether. Yet others, many, become atheists. I myself personally am very agnostic. And yet others are simply ambivalent, and they just want to go live life. They want to eat the donut. They want to take the trip. I have to tell you, I have yet to meet anyone after being out for 13 years that left Jehovah's Witnesses and started their own church or religion. I haven't met one person. Do you? Do you know anyone? That's the claim by the governing body. They're infectious, doomed to death, and bird food because they're going to start their own religion and they rebel against Jehovah. It certainly is not the common reaction to deciding you don't want to follow 10 strangers living on a resort building complex, building TV studios in upstate New York. It's just absurd to think it's because Jehovah and Jesus are bad guys. I don't know anyone that left for that reason. It's also important to note here that some who leave Jehovah's Witnesses continue to believe and profess love for Jehovah of the Bible, his son Jesus. They even believe in a paradise earth hope as taught by Jehovah's Witnesses. But what they don't believe in is these 10 self-appointed guys that seem to just be getting fatter and richer off this system of things. So they're an apostate anyway. They believe in Jehovah, they believe in Jesus, believe in the Bible, believe in Christianity. Don't believe in the 10 guys. Guess what? You're an apostate anyway. And we are going to destroy your life. But none of those things even matter. There is zero common sense baked into this issue. It's a weapon of fear to use against Jehovah's Witnesses. All of this has gained steam in recent decades, including how they lock you into loyalty to them with the very baptism questions you say yes to when you get in the pool. The second one features an affirmation of loyalty to the organization. It tells you to proclaim yes in front of everyone. And the Bible doesn't teach organization anywhere. Apostasy is about hating God and his son and rejecting them. It's in the Bible. It's simple. Proof is everywhere that they do this. Proof is everywhere that it's about the organization and that you will be labeled an apostate and your life will be wrecked simply by saying you don't believe in the 10 guys in upstate New York. The Watchtower Study Edition of October 2022, page 20, had this to say, quote, "How can we safeguard ourselves from following the course of ridiculers? One way is to avoid associating with those who show a critical attitude. This means that we do not listen to or read anything from apostates. We realize that if we are not careful, we could easily develop a critical spirit and begin to doubt Jehovah and the direction we receive through his organization." End quote. It's all about the organization when it comes to apostasy. Very few people have I ever met that hated Jehovah and Jesus and their message. I haven't met one. Zero. I've met lots that have a problem with an organization run by 10 guys that seem to be building a real estate empire, a television studio, and allowing children to be heinously harmed. But in other references, those that simply don't agree with what the 10 dudes in upstate New York say are referred to as things like poison, snakes, and much, much more. What does a common Jehovah's Witness do with all of this vitriol and venom? Well, you heard what they said. They have no choice. So here it is. The governing body has gone on an absolute campaign to teach Jehovah's Witnesses how to treat people that just don't agree with the 10 guys. From the Our Christian Ministry Workbook of 2023 in May, page 16, under the aptly titled article, "Protecting Yourself from Apostasy," it says this, quote, "Satan and those under his influence often mix lies with truths in an attempt to undermine our faith. For example, the Assyrians used half-truths and outright lies to discourage Jehovah's people. Apostates use similar tactics today. How should we react to apostate teachings? Treat them as the poison they are. Never read them, reply to them, or repeat them. Be quick to detect information that is designed to raise doubts about Jehovah and his organization and reject it." End quote. I continue in 2023 to still look for the scripture that ties apostasy or Jehovah's Witnesses or what an apostate is or should do to any semblance of an organization. It's not in the Bible. The governing body ties the idea of apostasy and the fear that comes with it to them, the organization they run. The Bible in no way, shape, or form teaches that. But the governing body has leveraged the entire idea into a weapon a Jehovah's Witness can use to cut off people who don't think a publishing company represents the God of the Bible, or has put in print dates marking the end of this world that have never come true, or who told us to kill ourselves rather than get a tonsillectomy. It's all in print, folks. It's all there. And thousands of other insane, deceitful, dangerous ideas and teachings. In the Watchtower of 1993, October 1st, pages 15 through 20, the article, "Search Through Me, O God," it says this, quote, "Apostates are included among those who show their hatred of Jehovah by revolting against him. Apostasy is in reality a rebellion against Jehovah. Some apostates profess to know and serve God, but they reject teachings or requirements set out in his word. Others claim to believe the Bible, but they reject, here it is, Jehovah's organization, and actively try to hinder its work. When they deliberately choose such badness after knowing what is right, when the bad becomes so ingrained that it is an inseparable part of their makeup, then a Christian must hate, in the biblical sense of the word, those who have inseparably attached themselves to badness. True Christians share Jehovah's feeling towards such apostates. They are not curious about apostate ideas. On the contrary, they feel a loathing toward those who have made themselves God's enemies, but they leave it to Jehovah to execute vengeance." End quote. It is a masterclass in gaslighting. And it's not even good gaslighting. It's intellectually insulting. So how do you feel? Again, I've never met an apostate or someone who left Jehovah's Witnesses that even remotely resemble this description. The governing body has changed the meaning of the word to reflect not wanting to be a Jehovah's Witness and serve the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society and give them their money and allegiance. There are hundreds and hundreds of quotes from the governing body on how to treat us apostates. I could sit here for hours sharing them, but one that took the spotlight that I think has really become the cry of the apostate army, that's not even a term, I just made that up, of just people who've walked away and said, I don't want this BS anymore, came to us in 2011, in July 15th Watchtower, page 16, paragraph 6, where it says, "Apostates quietly bring their ideas into the congregation, like criminals who secretly bring things into a country. Well, apostates are mentally diseased, and they seek to infect others with their disloyal teachings. Jehovah, the great physician, tells us to avoid contact with them." End quote. That term, mentally diseased, where do I even begin? But do you see what the governing body does to a Jehovah's Witness who's perhaps uneducated, who hasn't given any thought to this, but who has someone that they love, who's having doubts, who's discovered what Jehovah's Witnesses and the governing body really are, and they're starting to make their exit? This is how we are to treat those people, according to the 10 guys. Mentally diseased. Never mind the gaslighting, that they compare people who know that they're a scam to criminals, the very 10 guys that allow child molesters, pedophiles, and those that assault children and women to sit in kingdom halls undetected. Those who are truly criminals, they plant in the mind of a Jehovah's Witness that those of us who see through their BS as the true criminals, mentally diseased. And that doozy got the Big Ten in New York in some hot water in several countries, including the UK, for use of hate speech. And again, I'm going to point out the mind-numbing irony of how the governing body treats apostates versus how Jehovah and Jesus treat apostates. Trust me, I'm getting there. That's really the core of this episode. But before we do, this entire hatred toward anyone that disagrees with what is obviously mindless bullshit is regularly reinforced by the governing body. It's constant. They have gross paranoia and insecurity about anyone who sees through their act. Tony Morris in particular loves to talk about the day he gets to split us all open like hot dogs or snuff us out like a match. Jesus' hand-picked guy, Jesus' brother, his king, is chomping at the bit to kill billions of people who don't agree with him, as he says in a video from 2020, and he's doing in videos in 2023. One of Jesus' favorite guys, keep this in mind, one of Jesus, the epitome of love, from the God of love, one of his guys that he handpicked, allegedly, goes on to call people despicable apostates. He lights a match, he blows it out, he smirks into the camera, and he goes on to relate how relieved he will be to kill everyone that disagrees with him. It's on their website, folks. It's on the website. So with all that said, be very clear on something. You can't just leave Jehovah's Witnesses. If you decide you had a change of heart, since you were probably, like so many of us, baptized maybe at 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 17, or maybe younger, you can't just leave. You're bound by the contract that states you will remain loyal to these 10 men and their organization. They look to wreck your life and isolate you from everyone, including your family, if you slightly disagree. And I am boldly going to state, I know that some that may be taking the time to listen to this little show are in that boat. My heart bleeds for you. I too am being shunned as someone that disagrees with the 10 guys in upstate New York and can easily point it out, as I attempt to do here in my own way. I bleed for you. There isn't any amount of emotion how awful this is. But none of this stops the governing body by continuing to lie. In recent times, members of the governing body have claimed that a JW can simply leave on their own without any repercussions. You've seen it on video in the Australian Royal Commission. You've seen it in print. You've seen it with some of their representatives with the media. They claim, oh yeah, we can leave. They just leave and they just move about their life. Those people 100% of the time are labeled as apostates. They claim they don't do that. But then they write things like this and send it out to millions of people in a master class of gaslighting. From the Enjoy Life Forever and Interactive Bible Course, pages 241 and 242, lesson 58, it says this, quote, "What if someone we know has decided that he no longer wants to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses? It can be heartbreaking when someone close to us does this. That person may force us to choose between him and Jehovah. We must be determined to remain loyal to God above all else. So we obey Jehovah's command not to associate with such individuals." End quote. There it is in 2023 in print. And then you will go and watch some of their PR people and their media talking heads and even the governing body say, oh, that's not true. People can leave. They can come and go as they please. No. It's a lie. It's gaslighting. It's despicable. And it's easy to show people. And this is all exactly like blackballing a family member for preferring spaghetti, but you prefer lasagna. You have every right to like lasagna, but I don't care for it. Well, guess what? We can no longer speak. You can no longer speak to me or meet me or be with me as a member of your family. That's Jehovah's Witness apostasy. You can't just leave or even politely disagree. You're mentally diseased and you're doomed to death because we don't both like lasagna. It's incredible. I like tomatoes. You hate tomatoes. We can't be friends. It's it's ridiculous. It's evil. And it's destroying lives. It's destroying families. It's destroying children. But if you're still in doubt, and you're like stinking, rotting flesh, according to them, check out the Watchtower of 89, October 1st, pages 15 through 20, Maintain Your Faith and Spiritual Health, where it goes on to compare those of us that just don't like lasagna, we prefer spaghetti, or we just want to peacefully let you eat your lasagna, it doesn't impact our life. We are compared in this Watchtower to this, quote, how fast gangrene spreads. To prevent death, the doctor may have to amputate a part of the body. So if doubts, complaints, or apostasy threaten to contaminate you spiritually, cut them away quickly. Get help from the congregation elders, end quote. How do you measure such intense cruelty? This is parents to children. This is marriage mates. This is children. Cut off forever. Cut them off like gangrene. Because we just don't agree with what 10 guys in upstate New York say. By the way, we might have agreed with what they said in the past, but then they changed it, and any day now they might go back to what they said in the past. They do it all the time. They call it new light. But we don't agree with it. We still can't explain what an overlapping generation is. Neither can they, but that's okay. How do you measure the cruelty and impact this has on the lives of human beings in this matter of apostasy? And so when I ask at the outset what you fear, this is what Jehovah's Witnesses fear. It's a life-altering decision to speak up and go, yeah, you guys keep saying the sky's red, but I can blatantly see it's blue. Don't you dare say it's blue again. You're being disobedient to us. You are an apostate. We're about to destroy your life. That's it. That is, in a nutshell, in simplified form, what it means to be someone among Jehovah's Witnesses who is accused of apostasy, the big A. It's incredible, and it's mass destruction. But there's something that I want to highlight more than anything else when it comes to this issue of apostasy. And again, probably going to need multiple episodes. This is a hot button ruining lives today. I'm guessing that most people that may listen to this little show have been told they're an apostate or have been launched from the drudgery of being a Jehovah's Witness, or should I say spiritual paradise. See the pile of poo on the top of the Watchtower in this show's logo. And it's all simply because they didn't agree with something taught and made the mistake of sharing that thought or that doubt with someone else. But more importantly, it's even possible that right at this moment there may be a current practicing Jehovah's Witness, I should say, that has landed here, and you're still listening. And I think what I share next might be the most important to them, those people, the few that may be here, or maybe comfort to the rest of us, because it's important to all of us. So here we go. When it comes to apostasy, here's a peek into my brain from a young age. There is a very, very, very big problem with apostasy, as explained by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's an irony that I recognized as a young guy. I'm talking pre-teen years. I struggled with this. For whatever reason, I'm a deep thinker. I'm a reader. I ponder, I stare, I disassociate, I drift. And this very big problem has haunted me since I was 10, 11, 12, I don't remember, on all things apostasy. I never hear it talked about, so I want to share it here. And I'm certainly open to feedback, agree or disagree. Here goes. The entire Bible narrative, every story, every verse, doesn't remotely support the Jehovah's Witness view of apostates or even those that just want to peacefully leave and still have a relationship with their loved ones. It's not there in the Bible. I spotted this when I was young. On the scoreboard of stupid, dangerous, and deadly things those guys in upstate New York teach millions, this particular piece of apostasy does unbelievable damage. I'm not going to try to minimize the abuse that goes on in Jehovah's Witnesses. I hit on it a lot. The stuff with children it's despicable. What I'm saying here, though, on apostasy is that the modern-day campaign of vilifying those of us that have actually read the Bible, who have studied the Bible, or just really listened at the Kingdom Hall, and still disagree with basic teachings found in their book, isn't remotely biblical. I present to you a conundrum I've never put to bed. I still haven't put to bed, and I'd love to get your opinions, experiences, or even disagreements. Are you ready for this? Here goes. Jehovah and Jesus Christ, as portrayed in the Bible, seem to, how do I put this? They seem to really love apostates. The Jehovah and Jesus of the Bible really love apostates. Go ahead, take a breath, finish laughing, whatever it is. But if you take just one pass through the Bible, and with every subsequent reading of the Bible, you come to a very basic conclusion. Jehovah and his son Jesus really love apostates. That love includes speaking to them, eating with them, washing their feet, protecting them, nurturing them, and even saving them, saving their lives, bringing them into the fold. If you have never considered this, and I'm sure I can't be the only one that has come to this conclusion, I'm not that smart. I'd like you to consider, well, the whole damn book. Read it. I'm going to fire off some examples of this, of how Jehovah and Jesus, shockingly and in blatant terms, love apostates. Let's go back in the Bible, the Old Testament, to just after Abraham, and take a peek at Jehovah's promise and covenant with this little nation known as Israel. For those that may only be somewhat familiar with Jehovah's letter to all mankind, let's just say that Israel, they had some issues in reference to loyalty. They had lots and lots and lots of issues with loyalty in listening and in practicing what they were commanded by Jehovah. Israel was, what I would call a master apostate. They did apostasy so well. They did it maybe better than anyone. I mean, once they got out of slavery in Egypt, they wasted no time melting down jewelry and bowls to build a golden calf. And even the priestly guy known as Aaron joined in. Isn't that kind of like a governing body member going apostate? Aaron got to live. And they all started worshiping this calf. The Israelites would bitch about everything. They were quick to cheat on Jehovah over and over and over again with other gods. They never saw a penis pole they didn't like. Phallus symbols were all over the nation. They would even build temples to other gods. The Israelites were disloyal at every turn. And I have to say, I'm guessing that no one listening to me right now, despite being an apostate, as we all are, has probably done any of these things that the Israelites did. You don't have an altar? a penis pole. You're not worshiping gods from other lands. Yeah, never did that either as an apostate. I somehow found a way to avoid that when I left. And Numbers 14:20 through 23, Jehovah tells Israel that they've already tested him 10 times. And folks, the fun hadn't even begun yet. Their disloyalty and, might we say, apostasy was just getting started. The vast majority of the Old Testament is all about Israel going apostate and how much Jehovah loved them anyway. And by the way, the apostasy by Israel in the entire Old Testament was led by kings and priests. But here's the thing I've never been able to correlate from my time as a kid on this matter of apostasy and what the governing body does to people who disagree, not 10 times, as apparently Israel did, just by numbers. And trust me, it was way more. But just one time, and you're dead today. But if you're looking just at the Bible right now, and you're peeking into the brain of this podcast host, Jehovah so apparently hated apostate Israel that they were poisoned, mentally diseased, and terrible, that the Old Testament is filled with examples of him often begging them to come back to him. Sure, I'm not stupid. He let them be conquered. They got punished when they didn't listen to his prophets. Did you know, though, that he hated these apostates so much that he sent, in just the Old Testament, 48 male prophets, starting with Abraham and ending with Malachi, and even let the ladies get involved, something the governing body would never let happen today unless they had a napkin on their head. He also sent 7 female prophetesses, with the last one being Esther. That's how much he hated apostates. 48 prophets, 7 prophetesses, begging, come back to me. And yes, he let them be taken into exile into other lands, lose everything they owned. They were often raped and pillaged by foreigners when they disobeyed. And in true fashion, Jehovah did allow, or as we see from Jehovah at times in that Old Testament section, he did allow or even initiated some of the violent tragedies upon them. You'll recognize some of his reoccurring favorites. They include poisonous snakes, plagues, drownings, earthquakes, even starvation. On starvation, then he threw him some bland manna, sort of like being punished by taking away pizza and giving you oatmeal. And as for the prophets he sent, some of them were even killed, delivering Jehovah's message to apostates. When is the last time you saw Tony Morris and his friends risking their lives for an apostate? No, apostasy, by the way, while it seems like it'd be cool, is not a new brand of scotch, Tony. I'm talking about a living, breathing human being apostate. Because in the Old Testament, Jehovah sent 48 prophets, 7 prophetesses. He begged, he pleads, he cries, he has regrets. He lets cause and effect happen, which is other nations harmed his people because they wouldn't come back to him. But he goes over and beyond throughout the first half of the Bible for apostates. Apostates. Not a watchtower. Not the library. The Bible. Are you sensing where I'm going here? I could give hours of proof, not from any terrible apostate, not from me, not for anyone who just disagrees with things, but from the Bible itself, about Jehovah's love for apostates. In Isaiah chapter 54 and verse 10, I recommend reading the entire chapter where Jehovah spends the whole chapter gushing about his love for his apostates. In one verse he says this, quote, "For the mountains may be removed, and the hills may be shaken, but my loyal love will not be removed from you, nor will my covenant of peace be shaken, says Jehovah, the one having mercy on you." End quote. When you read that, it doesn't really sound like a disfellowshipping announcement about some mentally diseased person who simply doesn't believe Stephen Lett and his friends are kings. Does it? Doesn't seem to jive. The mountains will go away before Jehovah stops loving his apostates. I'm not going to get into covenants and promises. It's the same concept. So, dear listener, and if you're a Jehovah's Witness, I ask you respectfully, how do you explain this with the ongoing diatribes and treatment of people that just don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore and follow these 10 guys? If you're uncomfortable, it's okay. So was I. I venture to guess that many that might be listening right now were really uncomfortable. But you know the answer. You know the answer. Listen to what your gut, what your body, what your mind and heart are telling you. There's no websites here. There's no books. There's no apostate videos. There's no picketing out front of the district convention. This is the Bible. And if you don't like the Old Testament, sit back and buckle in, because it keeps getting better in the New Testament, with its main character, God's Son, a guy named Jesus. Dare I say, the entire reason for the book, the Bible, that God gives us to answer all of our problems. So let's take a look. How did Jesus treat or speak to apostates? Please realize the following fact. Jesus Christ of the Gospels in the Bible really only spoke and ministered and served apostates. The Jews were straight up apostates. They had rejected everything Jehovah gave them. Jesus showed up to save them. They were apostates. The Jews even had him killed. You don't believe me? In the New World Translation at Matthew 10, 5-6, it says this, quote, "These 12 Jesus sent out, giving them these instructions. Do not go off into the road of the nations, and do not enter any Samaritan city, but instead go continually to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." End quote. The Jews. Matthew 15:24, he goes on to say, he answered, "I was not sent to anyone except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." End quote. Jesus Christ of the Bible, no websites, no videos, no apostates. He himself said this at Matthew 15:24, quote, he answered, "I was not sent to anyone except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." As in, only the Jews. As in, they were lost because the Jews were apostates. To anyone listening, have you ever considered this? Is this just the brain of this crazy podcast host? Maybe. I doubt it. So wait, Jesus and his apostles, who he was talking to in those verses, could only speak to apostates. Yeah. And if you want proof that the Jews were full-blown apostates, scholars of that time have identified at least 24 competing belief systems among Jews in the first century. The Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Essenes, the Zealots, followers of John the Baptist, his cousin, followers of other charismatic leaders, and then finally Jesus himself. There was a lot going on, a lot of apostasy. And before you just consider what I just shared that's obviously in your book. I'm no genius. I'm just a dude. Before you dismiss it as, well, yeah, but that's Jesus. It's Jesus. You may have missed the point where not only is a Jehovah's Witness supposed to follow his example closely, he's commanded to do this. At 1 John 2:6, it simply states, quote, "The one who says he remains in union with him is himself under obligation to go on walking just as that one walked." End quote. Jesus' walk with apostates is easy to see. It's 4 books of the Bible. He was kind and loving, even to those that didn't like him or were apostates. Wow, huh? Tax collectors, whores, apostates. But if you easily dismiss this, or you're fighting right now against the cognitive dissonance that wars with your mind, like, well, he's God's son, he's Jesus. Let me point out, as you just saw in these verses, he also commanded his apostles, just guys, just schmoes, people like you and I, to only witness to apostates, the Jews. That didn't even change until the Apostle Peter started talking to Gentiles later, after Jesus was gone. In fact, the apostles themselves were apostate Jews. The apostles were apostates and had grown up in apostasy. These are the musings of my mind from a young age. The Bible doesn't support what the governing body is telling Jehovah's Witnesses to do. It actually commands them to do the exact opposite. Now, sure, the Bible has commands about mixing with people that are living debauched lives or doing terrible things. Yeah, common sense stuff. Don't hang out with them. Don't do that stuff. Reject them if they're pushing it on you. But at no point in any way, shape, or form does the Bible, Jehovah or Jesus of the Old Testament or New, teach a modern-day Jehovah's Witness to reject and treat apostates as mentally diseased and doomed to bird food, like the 10 guys in upstate New York consistently tell them. You really have to ask yourself at this point, why aren't Jehovah's Witnesses following the example of Jehovah and Jesus? It couldn't possibly be the 10 guys in upstate New York, right? No. Could it be? As we wind this subject down, Jehovah was certain to give you a book that underwent grave danger, that got many people killed just for protecting it, that is literally filled page after page with story after story of how much he loves apostates. In fact, arguably, the vast majority of the entire Bible is a book about Jehovah and Jesus loving apostates. It's okay to disagree with me here. Trust me, I'm ready for the arguments. Keep them coming. This is my conclusion. But I saw this at like 10, 11, 12. I don't remember the exact day. And I've had decades to consider this subject and watch it and turn it over and flip it over and rethink it and re-examine. But one thing's for certain. By treating a family member or a friend or someone you love that has left the organization or just decided not to be a Jehovah's Witness any longer the way the governing body commands you to do it, folks, you're literally going against Jehovah and his son Jesus Christ. You're becoming, by Bible definition, an apostate. These aren't my words. These are the stories, principles, history, and counsel given to you in a book called the Bible. If you're a Jehovah's Witness and you're pondering this and you're still here listening to some goofy stranger share his thoughts, you're brave. You're brave. How do you explain this? I can only speak as someone that to this day has been labeled a traitor. I'm disloyal. I'm poisonous. I'm a snake. Or I'm mentally diseased, an apostate. And my only conclusion after 13 years out and much time to think about this one subject is this. I'm in really good company. Really good company. Give this some thought. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, again, that has bravely listened to this diatribe, this guy you'll likely never meet, I can only say, you don't need this podcast. You don't need a book. You don't need a YouTube video. You don't need those pickets at the district convention. You just need your gut, your brain, and some time. Some time. You got this. It's right in front of you. It's under your nose. You can feel it. When it comes to the biggest fear of Jehovah's Witnesses, and that fear being apostasy, take another look. Take another look. Listen. Contemplate. Above all else, I want to tell you this. You're not alone. And you'll never be alone. There are a ton, thousands of loving, kind, albeit a little broken, a little scarred, other apostates out here. And we are nothing like you've been told we are. Thanks for joining me. Tough subject, a lot of emotion. Until we see you next week, be well.